In the frozen woods of Aspen Creek, no one survives after dark. Not with the blizzard coming, and certainly not with the creatures that howl in the distance. But Clara Bennett didn't care about the stories. She only cared about the whimper of pain she heard near the frozen lake. What she found wasn't just an animal. It was a white wolf, bound in burning silver chains, left to die by his own treacherous kin. She didn't know that by cutting those chains, she wasn't just saving a beast. She was unleashing Roman Sterling, the ruthless Alpha King who had been missing for 3 years. And tonight, the hunters who left him for dead are about to learn that karma doesn't just bite, it rips you apart. The snow in Aspen Creek wasn't soft. It was like crushed glass, biting into the skin and freezing the lungs. Clara Bennett pulled her scarf tighter around her face, her breath puffing out in white clouds that were instantly snatched away by the wind. It was nearly midnight. Sensible people were inside, huddled by their fireplaces in the town below, not trudging through the ghost pine forest with a flashlight that was threatening to flicker out. Clara wasn't out here for the thrill. She was out here because rent was due in 3 days, and old Mrs. Higgins had offered her $50 to find a lost golden retriever named Buster. $50 meant groceries for a week. "Buster!" Clara called out, her voice barely rising above the howling wind. "Here, boy." She swept the beam of her flashlight across the tree line. The pines stood like silent sentinels, heavy with snow. There was no sign of a dog. She was about to turn back, defeated, when she heard it. It wasn't a bark. It was a low, guttural sound, part growl, part agony. Clara froze. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. She knew the legends of Aspen Creek. Everyone did. They said the forest belonged to the Grey Walkers, large wolves that supposedly vanished into thin air. Most people called them tall tales to scare tourists. Clara, a 23-year-old nursing student who believed in science and double shifts, didn't have time for fairy tales. But that sound was real. She moved toward it, stepping cautiously over buried roots. The sound came from a clearing near the frozen edge of Blackwater Creek. As she pushed through a thicket of holly bushes, the beam of her light hit something that made her gasp. It wasn't a dog. It was massive, easily the size of a small pony. A wolf with fur as white as the snow around it lay on its side. But it wasn't resting. It was thrashing. Clara's instinct was to run. This was a predator, an apex killer. But then she saw the blood. Bright crimson stained the pristine white snow, melting it in a gruesome circle. The wolf was bound. Thick, heavy chains were wrapped around its muzzle, its paws, and its torso. They weren't rusted iron or steel. They gleamed with a strange, polished luster under her flashlight. Silver. The wolf jerked, trying to stand, but the chains seemed to sear into its flesh. Smoke rose where the metal touched the fur. The smell of burning hair and cooking meat hit Clara's nose, making her stomach lurch. "Oh my God," she whispered. The wolf stopped thrashing. It turned its head, and Clara found herself locked in a gaze that nearly brought her to her knees. The animal's eyes weren't wild or frantic. They were a piercing, intelligent amber gold. There was a depth to them that felt terrifyingly human. He growled, a warning rumble that vibrated in Clara's chest, baring teeth that were clamped shut by a silver muzzle. "I'm not going to hurt you," Clara said, her voice shaking. She took a step forward. "You're burning. Those chains. They're burning you." The wolf watched her. He didn't struggle as she approached, though she could see the tremors of pain racking his massive body. Clara fell to her knees in the snow beside him. Up close, the heat radiating from him was intense, like an open oven door. She reached out, hesitating, then touched the chain wrapped around his front leg. She expected it to be hot, but it was freezing cold to her touch. Yet, where it touched the wolf, his skin blistered. Silver nitrates, she realized, her nursing brain kicking in, or pure silver. It's reacting to him. She looked around. Who would do this? This was torture. Complex, expensive torture. The chains were secured with a heavy padlock near the creature's neck. "I can't break this," Clara muttered, panic rising. "I don't have a key." The wolf let out a sharp exhale, his golden eyes dimming. He was dying. The wounds were too deep, the shock too great. Clara looked at her bag. She didn't have bolt cutters. She had a leash, dog treats, and a pair of heavy-duty trauma shears she kept in her coat pocket from her clinical rotations. She pulled out the shears. They could cut through a penny or a leather boot, but a thick silver chain. Impossible. But then she noticed something. The chains weren't solid links. They were a mesh, woven together with thinner wire to allow flexibility for the torture. If she could snip the connecting wires, the main links might fall apart. "Okay," she whispered, leaning over the massive head. "This is going to hurt. Please don't kill me." She slid the shears under the wire mesh near his neck. The wolf flinched, a low whine escaping his throat. Clara worked frantically, her fingers numb from the cold. Snip. One wire gave way. Snip. Another. The wind howled louder, and for a second, Clara thought she heard voices, shouting, coming from the ridge above them. "Find him!" A voice roared in the distance. "He can't have gone far with that silver on him!" The wolf's eyes snapped open wide. He tried to lunge, panic overtaking him, but Clara pressed a hand to his shoulder. "Stay still!" she hissed. "They're coming for you! The people who did this!" The wolf blinked once. A confirm. "Then we have to hurry." Clara's fear transformed into adrenaline. She jammed the shears harder, putting her entire body weight into the leverage. The metal groaned. The voices were getting closer, flashlight beams cutting through the trees up the hill. "I see tracks!" a man shouted. "Down by the creek!" "Come on," Clara grunted, sweat beading on her forehead, despite the freezing cold. With a final, desperate heave, the main retention wire snapped with a loud ping. The heavy silver collar fell loose into the snow. The reaction was instantaneous. As soon as the silver lost contact with his skin, the wolf didn't just stand up. He exploded into motion. The other chains, now loose without the central anchor, slid off his body. Clara scrambled backward, falling onto her rear in the snow. "Go!" she yelled. "Run!" But the wolf didn't run. A sickening, cracking sound filled the air. The sound of bones breaking and knitting back together in seconds. The white fur retracted, rippling away like a tide. The snout shortened, the paws lengthened into hands. Clara clamped her hands over her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. She watched in horrified fascination as the massive beast contorted and reshaped itself. Within 10 seconds, the wolf was gone. In its place, kneeling in the steam rising from his own body, was a man. He was stark naked, oblivious to the sub-zero temperature. He was massive, well over 6 feet tall, with cords of muscle that looked like they were carved from granite. His skin was tanned, scarred in places, and steam rolled off his broad shoulders. He kept his head down for a moment, breathing heavily, his hands clutching the snow. Then he looked up. It was the same eyes. That piercing, golden amber. He had a jawline sharp enough to cut glass and dark hair that fell messily over his forehead. He looked dangerous, lethal, and he was looking right at Clara. "You!" he rasped. His voice was deep, rough like gravel. "You cut the silver." Clara couldn't speak. She just nodded, her eyes wide. She scrambled to her feet, ready to run. She had just saved a monster, a shapeshifter. This wasn't possible. "The hunters!" she managed to squeak out. "They're coming." The man stood up to his full height, unashamed of his nudity. He looked down at his body, inspecting the angry red burns where the chains had been. They were already fading, healing before Clara's eyes. "Let them come," he said, a cold smile twisting his lips. It wasn't a smile of joy, it was a smile of promised violence. There's a dozen of them," Clara stammered, pointing up the ridge. "They have guns." The man turned to her. For a split second, his expression softened. "You should not be here, little nurse. What is your name?" "Clara. Clara Bennett." "Clara," he tested the name on his tongue. "Go home. Forget you saw this." "They'll kill you," she argued, surprised by her own boldness. "You're naked and unarmed." He laughed, a dark, terrifying sound. "I am never unarmed." A gunshot rang out. A bullet whizzed past Clara's ear and struck a pine tree with a deafening thwack. "There he is!" A man in tactical gear emerged from the tree line, raising a rifle. "He shifted! Take him down!" Clara screamed as the man, the wolf, moved. He didn't run away. He moved with a speed that blurred the vision. He was in front of Clara in a heartbeat, shielding her body with his own. He roared, a sound that wasn't human, causing the snow to tremble on the branches. "Run, Clara," he commanded, shoving her toward the thicket. "Run and do not look back." Clara stumbled into the bushes, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She ran. She ran until her lungs burned and her legs felt like lead. Behind her, the sounds of the night changed. The gunshots stopped, replaced by screams. Terrible, wet screams of men realizing they were no longer the hunters, but the prey. She didn't stop until she reached her beat-up Honda Civic parked on the old logging road. She threw herself inside, locked the doors and sped away, her hands shaking so hard she could barely grip the steering wheel. She thought it was over. She thought she had escaped. She didn't know that she had left her scarf, a red wool scarf with her name tag stitched inside, lying in the snow next to the silver chains. 2 days passed. Clara spent them in a haze of anxiety. Every time a floorboard creaked in her tiny apartment, she jumped. She watched the local news obsessively. There were reports of a bear attack in the Ghost Pine Forest. 5 men found dead, mailed beyond recognition. Authorities were baffled by the savagery. Bear attack, Clara thought, shivering as she sipped her lukewarm coffee. Right. She tried to focus on her life. She had a shift at the diner, the Rusty Spoon, where she worked nights to pay for nursing school. It was a Tuesday night, usually slow. Clara was wiping down the counter, trying to ignore the flickering neon sign that buzzed incessantly. The diner was empty, except for Old Man Miller sleeping in a booth. The bell above the door chimed. A gust of icy wind blew in, carrying the scent of pine and something muskier, like rain and ozone. Clara looked up and dropped her rag. 2 men walked in. They were dressed in immaculate, expensive black suits that looked ridiculously out of place in a greasy Spoon diner. The first man was large, looking like a bodyguard. But the second man... Clara's breath hitched. He was wearing a charcoal suit that fit his broad frame perfectly. A crisp white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, revealing a hint of tanned skin. His dark hair was styled now, slicked back, but she recognized the sharp jawline. She recognized the predatory grace in his walk. And when he sat on a stool right in front of her, she recognized the eyes. Golden amber. It was him. The wolf. He placed an object on the counter. It was a red wool scarf. Clara stared at it, her blood running cold. "I believe this belongs to you," he said. His voice was civil, smooth, but there was an undercurrent of steel. Clara looked around. The cook was in the back. There was no one to help her. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me, Clara Bennett, he said softly. He leaned in, his eyes searching hers. Lying insults the bond. The bond? She whispered. You saved my life, he said. I am a man who pays his debts, and I am a man who protects what is his. I'm not yours, Clara snapped, fear giving way to defensiveness. I just didn't want to see an animal tortured. I would have done it for a stray cat. The bodyguard behind him chuckled, but the man in the suit held up a hand to silence him. My name is Roman Sterling, he said. Clara gasped. Everyone knew the name Sterling. The Sterling family owned half the state. They were real estate moguls, tech giants, philanthropists. They owned the hospital where she did her clinicals. You're Roman Sterling? She asked, incredulous. You've been missing. For 3 years. The news said you were kidnapped. Betrayed, Roman corrected darkly. By my own uncle. He locked me in that form, bound by silver, hoping the madness of the beast would consume my mind. He wanted my company. He wanted my title. He reached across the counter. Clara flinched, but he only took her hand. His skin was warm, his grip gentle but firm. I have reclaimed my company, Roman said. I have reclaimed my title. My uncle is being dealt with. But there is one problem remaining. What? Clara asked, unable to look away. The pack, Roman said, his voice dropping to a whisper only she could hear. To retake my place as the Alpha King, I must be strong. But the silver weakened me more than I let on. My enemies are circling. They think I am frail. They need to see me stabilized. What does that have to do with me? You cut the chains, Roman said. When a human sheds blood or risks life to save an alpha, a primal bond is formed. My wolf, he recognizes you. He trusts you. He paused, his golden eyes darkening. I need a queen, Clara, a fake one. Someone to stand by my side at the winter solstice ball in 2 days, to show the other alphas that I am not only back, but I have found a mate. It will keep them from attacking until I am at full strength. Clara pulled her hand back. You want me to pretend to be your wife? You're insane. I have exams. I have rent. I will pay off your tuition, Roman said flatly. I will buy this diner and burn it down if you hate working here. I will give you $5 million for 1 week of your time. Clara's mouth fell open. $5 million. And if I say no, Roman's expression hardened. The men who hunted me, Gavin Boyd and his crew, they saw you. They know you helped me. If you are not under my protection, under my mark, they will come for you to get to me. You are already in the game, Clara. The only question is, do you want to be a pawn, or do you want to be the queen? The door to the diner burst open again. This time it wasn't a customer. 3 men in heavy leather jackets walked in. They carried the smell of wet dog and stale tobacco. Their eyes were dark, shifting nervously. Roman didn't turn around. He just sighed, picking up a menu. Gavin's lackeys, Roman murmured to Clara. Right on schedule. One of the men pulled a serrated knife from his belt. Found you, Sterling, and the little bitch won't cut the leash. Roman looked at Clara, his eyebrow raised. Well, Clara, do we have a deal? Say yes, and I tear them apart. Say no, and I walk out that door. Clara looked at the knife. She looked at Roman's calm, terrifying confidence. Deal, she whispered. Roman smiled. He spun on his stool, facing the attackers. Gentlemen, Roman said, unbuttoning his suit jacket. You have interrupted my date. Bad move. The fight in the diner lasted less than 20 seconds. It was a blur of violence that Clara could barely process. As the first thug lunged with the knife, Roman didn't dodge. He stepped into the strike. With a motion too fast for Clara to track, he caught the man's wrist. There was a sickening snap of bone, followed by a scream that was cut short as Roman drove his elbow into the man's throat. The attacker crumpled to the linoleum floor, gasping for air. The other two hesitated. That was their mistake. Roman picked up a heavy glass sugar dispenser from the counter and hurled it. It struck the second man squarely in the forehead, knocking him unconscious instantly. The third man, the largest of the group, roared and charged, tackling Roman into a booth. Wood splintered. Ketchup and mustard bottles exploded. Clara screamed, backing against the pie display case. Roman! But Roman wasn't losing. He was laughing. A low, guttural growl erupted from his chest, a sound that wasn't human. He grabbed the third man by the collar of his leather jacket and the belt of his jeans, lifting all 250 pounds of him into the air as if he were a rag doll. With a snarl, Roman threw him through the plate glass window of the diner. The man landed in the snow outside, groaning amidst the shattered glass. Silence fell over the diner. The only sound was the sizzling of the grill and the heavy breathing of the Alpha King. Roman adjusted his suit jacket, which didn't have a single wrinkle, and brushed a shard of glass off his shoulder. He turned to Clara. His eyes were glowing a vibrant electric gold. "The deal is sealed," Roman said, his voice rough with adrenaline. He extended a hand to her. "Come." Clara looked at the unconscious men, then at the terrifying power standing in front of her. Her old life, the overdue rent, the double shifts, the loneliness, was gone. She took his hand. "Where are we going?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Home," Roman replied. Outside, a sleek black SUV pulled up. The driver, the bodyguard from earlier, opened the door. Roman ushered her in. As they sped away from the diner, Clara saw blue police lights flashing in the distance, but the car turned onto a private road that led up the mountain, far away from the jurisdiction of the town police. "Those men," Clara whispered, looking at her hands. "Did you kill them?" "They will live," Roman said, pouring himself a drink from a crystal decanter built into the car's console. "But they will limp for the rest of their miserable lives. A message to Gavin Boyd. The king is back." He handed her a glass of amber liquid. "Drink. It will calm your nerves. It's aged whiskey, older than you are." Clara took a sip. It burned, but the warmth spread through her chest, settling her shaking limbs. "So," she said, trying to regain some composure, "I'm supposed to be your fake queen. What does that actually mean? Do I just wave and smile?" Roman looked at her, his expression serious. "You are entering a viper's nest, Clara. My family, the Sterling Pack, is one of the oldest and most ruthless in the country. They respect only one thing: power. If they smell fear on you, they will eat you alive. You cannot just smile. You must command." "I'm a nursing student," Clara argued. "I command patients to take their meds. I don't command. Werewolves?" "You commanded me," Roman countered softly. Clara paused. "I didn't command you. I saved you. In my world, there is no difference. You held my life in your hands, and you chose to give it back. That gives you status. But to the others, we need a story." He pulled a leather-bound folder from the seat pocket. "The story is this. We met 3 years ago, before my disappearance. We were secret lovers. When my uncle Silas had me abducted and trapped in wolf form, you were the only one who didn't give up looking. You found me. You broke the curse. We are soulmates." Clara laughed nervously. "That sounds like a bad romance novel." "It's a story they will fear," Roman said, "because it implies that our bond was strong enough to break silver magic. It makes us look invincible." The car slowed down as they approached a massive iron gate. It swung open, revealing a sprawling estate that looked more like a fortress than a home. Stone walls, high towers, and prowling guards with glowing eyes patrolling the perimeter. "Welcome to Wolf's Point," Roman said. "One more thing," Clara said, clutching the folder. "Why me? You have money. You could hire an actress, a model, someone who knows how to lie." Roman turned to her, and for the first time, his face showed a crack of vulnerability. He reached out, his thumb tracing the line of her jaw. The touch sent a shockwave of heat through her body. "Because, Clara," he murmured, his eyes searching hers. "When I was an animal, lost in the madness of the pain, I wanted to kill everyone. I hated the world. But when you looked at me, you didn't see a monster. You saw a soul. An actress can fake love, but she cannot fake that kind of compassion. I need someone real." The car stopped. The door opened. Now, Roman's mask of cold authority slammed back into place. "Chin up, Clara. The performance begins." The interior of Stirling Manor was breathtaking. High-vaulted ceilings, chandeliers that dripped with crystals, and a fireplace large enough to roast an ox. But the atmosphere was cold. Servants moved silently, eyes downcast. Master Roman, an elderly butler, bowed low. "It is a relief to see you returned." "It's good to be back, Henry," Roman said, tossing his coat to the man. "Prepare the East Wing for Miss Bennet. She is my guest, and my future wife." Henry's eyes widened, but he schooled his expression quickly. "Of course, sir. Immediately." "Wife?" Clara hissed as they walked up the grand staircase. "You said fake queen." "Queen implies wife in our laws," Roman whispered back. "Don't worry. The ceremony will be fake too. Unless," he smirked, "unless you want the real thing." "In your dreams, wolf boy," Clara shot back. Roman laughed, a genuine sound that echoed in the hall. "I like your claws, Clara. Keep them sharp. You're going to need them." They reached the top of the stairs, and the mood instantly shifted. Standing in the hallway was a woman. She was stunning, tall, with raven black hair cascading down her back, and a dress of crimson silk that clung to every curve. But her face was twisted in a sneer of pure malice. "So," the woman said, her voice like poisoned honey, "the rumors are true. The prodigal pup returns." "Vanessa," Roman said, his voice dropping an octave. The air temperature seemed to plummet. "I see you haven't been kicked out yet." "This is my home, Roman." Vanessa stepped forward, ignoring Clara completely. "Your Uncle Silas has been very generous to me in your absence. We were consoling each other." Roman's jaw tightened. "My uncle is a traitor, and you, Vanessa, were my betrothed before I vanished. It took you what? A week to warm his bed?" Vanessa shrugged, a cruel smile playing on her lips. "Power is attractive, Roman. You were gone, presumed dead. A girl has to survive." Finally, her dark eyes flicked to Clara. She looked Clara up and down, curling her lip as if she smelled something rotting. "And what is this?" Vanessa laughed. "Did you pick up a stray on the highway? She smells like antiseptic and cheap shampoo. A human." Clara felt a flush of shame, but she remembered Roman's words. "Chin up." "I'm Clara," she said, stepping forward. "And I'm not a stray. I'm the one who brought him back." Vanessa stepped into Clara's personal space. She was taller than Clara, wearing towering heels. Her eyes flashed red, a sign of a female alpha wolf. "You are a pet," Vanessa spat. "A temporary distraction. Do you really think a human can handle him? He will break you. He is a king, and kings need queens, not little nurses who play dress-up." Vanessa reached out, grabbing a lock of Clara's hair. "Look at this. Split ends. Pathetic." Suddenly, a hand clamped around Vanessa's wrist. Roman was there. He didn't look angry. He looked bored, which was infinitely more terrifying. He squeezed Vanessa's wrist, slowly. Vanessa gasped, her knees buckling as the pressure increased. "Let go," she winced. "You touch her again," Roman said calmly, "and I will remove the hand. Clara is not a pet. She is my mate, and unlike you, she has loyalty. Now get out of my sight before I forget that I don't hit women." He released her. Vanessa stumbled back, rubbing her bruising wrist. She glared at Clara with pure hatred. "This isn't over," Vanessa hissed. "The solstice ball is tomorrow. The Pack Council will never accept a human. You'll be dead by midnight." She turned and stormed down the hall. Clara let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Her legs felt shaky. "Is she always that pleasant?" Clara asked. "She's worse on Mondays," Roman said. He looked at Clara, his expression softening. "You stood your ground. Good." "She made me feel like dirt," Clara admitted. "Look at me, Roman. I'm wearing thrift store jeans. I don't fit in here." "She's right. I look like a stray." Roman took her shoulders, turning her to face a large, gilded mirror on the wall. "Look," he commanded. Clara looked at her reflection. She saw a tired girl with messy hair, but behind her, she saw Roman. He stood like a shadow, dark and powerful, his hands protective on her shoulders. They looked like opposites, light and dark, frail and strong. "I don't see a stray," Roman said, meeting her eyes in the reflection. "I see the woman who walked into a frozen forest and faced a monster without flinching. Clothes are just costumes, Clara. We can buy costumes." He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "Get the styling team," he ordered, "the best in the city, and tell them to bring the Diamond Vault collection. We have a queen to crown." The next 6 hours were a whirlwind. A team of 5 stylists descended on the guest wing. Clara was scrubbed, polished, waxed, and massaged until her skin glowed. Her mousy brown hair was dyed a rich chestnut and styled into cascading waves. When they finally put her in the dress, the room went silent. It was a gown of midnight blue velvet, off the shoulder, with a slit that went up to her thigh. It was dusted with crushed sapphires that caught the light like stars. Around her neck, they placed a necklace of heavy, intricate silver and diamonds, the Sterling family crest. Roman walked in just as the stylists were finishing. He stopped dead in the doorway. He was wearing a tuxedo, looking devastatingly handsome. But he wasn't looking at the dress. He was looking at her face. "Well?" Clara asked, feeling shy. "Do I look like a queen?" Roman walked over to her slowly. He signaled for the stylists to leave. The door clicked shut, leaving them alone in the vast dressing room. "You look dangerous," he murmured. He reached out, adjusting the necklace. His fingers brushed the sensitive skin of her neck, and Clara shivered. "Dangerous is good, right?" she breathed. "Dangerous is necessary." Roman leaned down, his face inches from hers. The air between them crackled with tension. It wasn't just the fake act anymore. There was something real, something magnetic pulling them together. "Tomorrow night," Roman whispered, his lips brushing her ear. "Silas will try to break us. He will try to kill me. He will try to humiliate you. Do not leave my side. Do not trust anyone but me. Can you do that?" "Yes," Clara whispered. Roman pulled back, his golden eyes burning. "Then let's go show them who owns the night." The grand ballroom of the Sterling estate was a sea of predators. Hundreds of guests filled the room. The men wore tuxedos, the women wore couture gowns. But beneath the civility, there was an edge of violence. These were the alphas, betas, and gammas of the region's most powerful packs. When the double doors opened and the announcer shouted, "The Alpha King, Roman Sterling, and his companion, Clara Bennett," the music stopped, Every head turned. Clara gripped Roman's arm. Her heart was hammering so loud she feared the werewolves could hear it. Roman's arm was like a steel bar, unshakable. "Walk," he whispered. "Head high." They descended the grand staircase. Clara could feel the judgment, the whispers. A human. Is that her? She smells like fear. He looks weak. They reached the floor. Immediately the crowd parted, creating a path toward the throne chairs at the end of the room. But standing in front of the thrones was a man who looked like an older, crueler version of Roman. Silas Sterling. He held a glass of champagne, smiling like a shark. Beside him stood Vanessa, looking smug in her red dress. "Roman!" Silas spread his arms wide. "My dear nephew, we were so worried. We heard terrible rumors that you had gone feral in the woods." "Save the act, Silas," Roman said, his voice carrying across the silent room. "You know exactly where I was. You put me there." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Accusations of treachery were serious. Silas chuckled, shaking his head. "Madness. The sickness of the wolf has clouded your mind. And look, you bring a human pet to a gathering of alphas? Have you lost all sense of tradition?" "She is my mate," Roman declared, "and she is the future queen of this pack." "A human cannot be queen," Vanessa shouted from Silas's side. "She is weak. She will die in childbirth. She cannot lead the hunt." "She saved my life," Roman roared, his voice causing the chandeliers to rattle, "while you, my family, left me to rot in silver chains." Silas's smile vanished. "Bold words, but words do not make a king. Strength makes a king." Silas snapped his fingers. Waiters appeared with trays of drinks. "A toast," Silas said, handing a glass to Roman. "To your return. If you are truly the Alpha, drink with me. Let us bury the hatchet." Clara squeezed Roman's arm. "Don't do it," she thought. "It's a trap." But Roman took the glass. To refuse a toast in front of the council was a sign of weakness. "To family," Roman said coldly, and drained the glass. For a moment, nothing happened. The music started up again. Couples moved to the dance floor. Roman took Clara's hand and led her into a waltz. "You shouldn't have drank that," Clara whispered as he spun her. "It was just wine," Roman said. "He wouldn't dare poison me in public. It's too obvious." But as the dance continued, Clara felt Roman's grip tighten. His skin, usually burning hot, was turning clammy. "Roman?" she asked. Roman stumbled. He missed a step. The crowd noticed. The murmurs started again. "He's drunk. No, he's sick. Get me. Outside," Roman gritted out, his teeth clenched. Beads of sweat broke out on his forehead. "It wasn't poison. It was wolfsbane, concentrated." Clara panicked. She wrapped her arm around his waist, trying to support his massive weight. "Okay, lean on me." "We're leaving." "Going somewhere?" Silas blocked their path. He was flanked by 4 large guards. Vanessa stood beside him, grinning. "The king looks tired," Silas mocked. "Perhaps he needs a nap, a permanent one." "Get out of our way," Clara said, surprised by the venom in her own voice. Silas looked down at her. "Or what, little nurse? You'll check my pulse?" He shoved Roman. Roman, the Alpha King who had thrown a man through a window just yesterday, crumbled. He fell to one knee, gasping, clutching his chest. The wolfsbane was attacking his heart, weakened by the years of silver torture. "He is unfit," Silas shouted to the room. "Look at him. He cannot even stand. By the laws of the pack, I challenge him. A duel. Right now." Roman tried to stand, but his legs gave out. He vomited a chaotic mix of blood and black bile onto the marble floor. "He cannot fight!" Clara screamed, shielding Roman with her body. "He's been poisoned! You coward!" "If he cannot fight," Silas said, drawing a long, ceremonial silver dagger from his jacket, then he forfeits, and the penalty for a forfeit is death." The crowd watched in silence. No one moved to help. This was the law of the wild. The strong replace the weak. Silas stepped forward, raising the dagger. "Goodbye, nephew." "No." Clara didn't think. She acted. She reached into the slit of her dress. Strapped to her thigh, hidden by the velvet, was the pair of heavy-duty trauma shears she had used to cut the chains in the woods. Roman had insisted she keep a weapon. "You are never unarmed," he had said. As Silas brought the dagger down, Clara lunged. She didn't go for his chest. She went for the hand holding the knife. She jammed the shears into Silas's wrist and squeezed. Silas screamed, a high, shocked sound. The silver dagger clattered to the floor. Clara kicked the dagger away, spinning to face the circle of stunned werewolves. She stood over the fallen Roman, holding her bloody shears, her blue dress stained with the Alpha's blood. "Anyone else?" she screamed, her voice breaking with terrified rage. "Anyone else want to touch him?" Silas clutched his bleeding wrist, his eyes wide with disbelief. A human had drawn Alpha blood. "Kill her!" Silas shrieked to his guards. "Kill them both!" The guard stepped forward, shifting, claws extending. Clara backed up, terrified. She couldn't fight 4 werewolves. She had bought Roman seconds, but it wasn't enough. She looked down at Roman. His eyes were rolling back in his head. "Roman, please," she begged. "Wake up." The first guard lunged. Suddenly, a howl shattered the air. But it didn't come from Roman. It came from the balcony. Glass shattered as a massive grey wolf leaped from the upper level, landing directly on the guard attacking Clara. Then another wolf. And another. "The Northern Guard!" someone shouted. "Roman's loyalists! They're here!" Chaos erupted. The ballroom turned into a battlefield. But amidst the fighting, Silas, bleeding and furious, grabbed a pistol from his waistband. He didn't aim at the wolves. He aimed at the human girl who had humiliated him. "Die, bitch!" Silas snarled. Bang! Clara flinched, waiting for the pain, but it never came. She opened her eyes. Roman was standing. He had taken the bullet. It had hit him in the shoulder, but he didn't seem to feel it. The sight of Clara in danger, the smell of her fear, had burned through the wolfsbane like acid. His eyes were no longer just gold. They were a swirling vortex of red and black. He wasn't just an alpha anymore. He was something ancient. "You," Roman whispered, his voice shaking the foundations of the house. "You tried to shoot my queen." Silas dropped the gun, his face draining of color. "Roman, wait." Roman didn't wait. He didn't shift. He simply walked forward, ignoring the chaos around him. He grabbed Silas by the throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand. "The challenge is accepted," Roman said. And with a sickening crunch, Roman snapped his uncle's neck. He dropped the body. Silence instantly reclaimed the room. The fighting stopped. Loyalists and traitors alike froze. Roman turned to the crowd, blood soaking his white shirt, the bullet wound already closing. He pointed a shaking finger at Clara. "She acts with my authority," Roman roared, his voice breaking into a growl. "She bled for me. She fought for me. She is not a human pet. She is the Alpha Queen. Bow to her." One by one, the wolves dropped to their knees. Even Vanessa, trembling in the corner, lowered her head. Roman looked at Clara. The red faded from his eyes, returning to warm gold. He took a step toward her, reached out his hand, and then his eyes rolled back. The adrenaline crashed. The poison and the bullet wound took their toll. Roman collapsed into Clara's arms, unconscious. The days following the bloody chaos of the solstice ball were a blur of sterilized needles, the rhythmic beeping of cardiac monitors, and hushed, fearful whispers in the stone corridors of Stirling Manor. The transition from a battlefield to a recovery ward was jarring, and the silence that fell over the estate was heavier than the noise of the fight. Roman didn't wake up immediately. The damage to his body was catastrophic. The concentrated wolfsbane had ravaged his internal organs, the silver bullet had shattered his shoulder, and the massive expenditure of energy required to snap Silas's neck, while his own heart was failing, had drained him to the very brink of death. For the first 48 hours, his fever spiked so high that steam literally rose from his skin, his body fighting a war between its natural healing factor and the poison trying to shut it down. For 3 agonizing days, Clara didn't leave his bedside. It wasn't a peaceful vigil. The pack doctors, traditional healers named Elias and Martha, who relied on crushed herbs, chanting, and ancient superstitions, tried repeatedly to push her out of the Alpha's quarters. They claimed a human had no place in the sacred healing chamber, that her scent would confuse the wolf spirit. Clara, exhausted but fueled by a stubborn, terrified rage, had thrown them out of the room. "He doesn't need chanting," she had screamed at Elias, blocking the door with her small frame. "He is in septic shock. He needs fluids, he needs antibiotics, and he needs his vitals monitored. If you touch him with those dirty herbs again, I will have the guards remove you." She had terrified them. Not because she was strong, but because she was desperate. She set up IV lines herself, her hands shaking only until the needle pierced the skin. She monitored his heart rate with equipment she had express ordered from the city hospital, paying for it with the credit card Roman had given her. She treated him not as a magical creature or a king, but as a critical trauma patient who was refusing to die on her watch. She slept in a hard wooden chair next to his bed, her head resting near his hand, terrified that if she let go, the fragile tether keeping him in the world of the living would snap. She wiped the sweat from his brow, whispered to him through the nightmares that made him growl in his sleep, and changed the dressings on his shoulder with the precision of a surgeon. On the 4th morning, the winter sun finally broke through the heavy velvet curtains, illuminating the millions of dust motes dancing in the silent air. The fever had broken in the night. Clara was standing over him, changing the gauze on his shoulder, her eyes gritty with fatigue, and her hair a messy knot atop her head. "You have terrible bedside manner," a voice rasped. It was barely a whisper, rough like sandpaper, but to Clara it sounded like a choir of angels. She dropped the roll of gauze, her heart skipping a beat. Roman was watching her. His eyes were tired, the vibrant gold dimmed to a soft amber, but they were open, and they were lucid. "You're awake," Clara breathed, her voice cracking. The professional facade she had maintained for 3 days crumbled in an instant. Tears she had been holding back suddenly spilled over, hot and fast. "You idiot! You absolute idiot! You took a bullet for me. You could have shifted. You could have healed." Roman tried to sit up, wincing as the movement pulled at his healing shoulder, but he lacked the strength. He settled back against the silk pillows, a weak, lopsided smile touching his pale lips. It seemed like the gentlemanly thing to do. Besides, I couldn't let him ruin your dress. You looked too good in it. "I thought you were dead," Clara sobbed, abandoning the medical equipment and burying her face in the mattress by his hand. Her shoulders shook with the release of the tension. "I thought the contract was over. I thought I'd be kicked out. I didn't know what to do." Roman's hand moved. It was heavy and slow, but his fingers found their way into her hair, tangling weakly in the strands. The touch was grounding. "The contract," Roman murmured, his voice gaining a fraction of its old strength, though it was still laced with pain. "The contract is void, Clara." Clara froze. The breath trapped in her lungs turned into a sharp pain. She slowly lifted her head, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand, fear replacing the relief. Void. So, I leave. I get my money and go. Is that it? The show is over. She started to pull away, her mind already racing with the humiliation of packing her bags, of going back to the diner, back to the loneliness. No, Roman said. He tightened his grip on her hair, preventing her from pulling away. Listen to me. The contract is void because it was based on a lie. It was a fake marriage arrangement. It was a business deal. I don't want a fake marriage anymore, Clara. I don't want a business partner. He looked at her with an intensity that made her heart stutter in her chest. Even weak, even broken in a bed, he was the alpha. You stood over my body and threatened a room full of apex predators with a pair of nursing shears, Roman said softly, his eyes searching hers. You saved me in the snow when everyone else left me to burn. You saved me in the ballroom when you could have run. You are not an employee. You are not a pet. You are my equal. But I'm human, Clara whispered, the insecurity gnawing at her. The pack, the council, they'll never accept it. The pack is terrified of you, Roman chuckled, though the sound turned into a dry cough. He took a breath and continued. I heard the guards talking outside the door while I was drifting in and out. They call you the Silver Nurse. They say you killed Silas with your bare hands, which isn't true, but I didn't correct them. In this world, fear is as good as respect. You have earned your place, Clara. He reached a shaking hand toward the drawer of the mahogany bedside table. He fumbled for a moment before pulling out a small, worn velvet box. I was going to wait until I could stand, Roman confessed, his thumb brushing over the velvet. I was going to take you to Paris, or the Alps, somewhere romantic and expensive. But I almost died 3 days ago, lying in the dark, hearing your voice. It taught me that waiting is for fools. We don't know how much time we have. He clicked the box open. Inside wasn't the massive, showy diamond the styling team had forced on her for the ball. It was a ring made of white gold, the metal twisted like a wild vine, holding a rare, raw amber stone in the center. It was unpolished, wild and beautiful. It was the exact color of his eyes. Clara Bennett, Roman said, his voice thick with emotion. Will you be my queen? Not for the cameras, not for the politics, not to save my reputation, but for me. Will you stay? Clara looked at the ring, and then at the man who had turned her life upside down. She thought about the fear. Yes, but she also thought about the way he looked at her, like she was the only anchor in his storm. She thought about how he had shielded her body with his own. Yes, she whispered, leaning down to kiss him, careful of his wounds. Yes, wolf boy, I will. 6 months later, the snow was falling again in Aspen Creek, blanketing the world in silence. But this time Clara wasn't cold. She stood on the high stone balcony of Stirling Manor, wrapped in a heavy white fur coat that Roman had bought her. Below in the sprawling courtyard, the pack was gathering for the evening meal. Things had changed drastically in 6 months. Under Clara's influence, the old ways of brutality and survival of the fittest were being dismantled. She had established a proper medical clinic on the grounds, integrating modern medicine with the wolves' natural healing abilities, saving dozens of pups who would have otherwise died from preventable illnesses. She had set up scholarship funds for the younger wolves who wanted to integrate into human society. She had turned the fortress into a home, but she was also the Alpha Queen, and she had learned that mercy had to be balanced with justice. She had dealt with the loose ends. A movement caught her eye near the servants' quarters, down by the icy stables. A woman in a rough, grey wool uniform was scrubbing the stone steps. She was on her hands and knees, dipping a bristle brush into a bucket of freezing water. Her hands were red, chapped, and raw from the cold and the lye soap. It was Vanessa. Roman, in his initial fury, had wanted to exile her. He wanted to cast her out into the rogue territories, where she would have been hunted down and killed within a week. But Clara had a different idea. Death is too easy, Clara had told him. Karma is living with what you lost. Karma is seeing what you could have had, every single day. Vanessa had been stripped of her status, her wealth, her jewelry, and her pack rank. She was no longer a high-ranking socialite. She was an omega, the lowest of the low in the pack hierarchy. She was tasked with the hardest, filthiest labor in the manner she used to think she ruled. Vanessa looked up, sensing eyes on her. She saw Clara standing on the balcony, warm, loved, and powerful. For a fleeting moment, a flash of the old hatred and arrogance crossed Vanessa's face, but then she saw the guards watching her. She felt the biting cold of the water on her raw skin. The defiance died in her eyes, replaced by a hollow, broken fear. She lowered her head in deep submission and went back to scrubbing the ice off the stairs. Enjoying the view? Strong, warm arms wrapped around Clara's waist from behind. Roman rested his chin on her shoulder, his solid presence radiating a supernatural heat that kept the winter chill at bay. He was fully healed, stronger than ever. The grey had left his skin, replaced by the vibrant flush of health and power. Just checking on the staff, Clara smiled, leaning back into his chest. Mrs. Higgins called me from town. She found a stray husky mix near the highway on-ramp. It's got a limp. She wants to know if we can take it. Another stray? Roman groaned theatrically, though he was smiling against the sensitive skin of her neck. Clara, we have 5 dogs already. The pack is starting to gossip. They think we're running an animal shelter, not a kingdom. We are running a shelter, Clara corrected him softly, placing her hand over his hands that were wrapped around her waist. She looked out at the snow-covered trees where they had first met. A shelter for lost things, for broken things that just need a chance to heal. She turned in his arms, looking up into those golden eyes that had once terrified her in the woods. I found you, didn't I? She asked softly. I found you broken in the snow. Roman kissed her forehead, then her nose, and finally her lips with a deep, possessing passion. You did, he whispered against her mouth. You cut the silver chains. You set me free. And now? Clara asked, tracing the scar on his shoulder where the bullet had hit him. Now, Roman said, looking out over the snowy kingdom that was finally at peace, his arm tightening around his wife. We run. And that is how a simple nursing student named Clara went from searching for a lost dog to ruling a kingdom of wolves. She proved that you don't need claws or fangs to be an alpha. Sometimes, the sharpest weapon you can have is compassion, and maybe a really good pair of trauma shears. Roman learned that true strength isn't about how much pain you can endure, but who stands beside you when you fall. Vanessa, on the other hand, learned the hardest lesson of all. When you treat people like dirt, you might just end up scrubbing it off their floors. What did you think of Clara's revenge on Vanessa? Was making her a servant enough justice, or did she deserve to be exiled to the wastelands? Let me know your verdict in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of twists, romance, and hard karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss another story from the files of the supernatural. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next video.